So there's simple pleasures and then there's really intricate pleasure too. And they're all connected. It's like, the trees with the roots and how they all intertwine with each other and they speak to each other. And when all the roots are working underground together, they're all aligned, they're not disconnected in certain ways, there is a real understanding of what our pleasure is. And our pleasure is passed on to us, and it's through the mother line, but it's also through the father line too. So it's interesting how we're talking about the masculine, but there's lots of other things there too. It's around how our body truly wants to show up and express itself every day, and how we let that expression come through is the purest form of pleasure.
Welcome to the Wildflow podcast with me, Charlotte Puanto, certified cycle and feminine embodiment coach and shamanic womb guide. In this podcast, I'll share my wisdom and conversations with powerful change makers, thought leaders, and embodied teachers to invite you to live cyclically in flow with your menstrual cycle instead of fearing it, to heal menstrual shame and normalize womb wisdom and period positivity, and to step into your sovereign magnetic power to create and embody the change you desire to see in your world. Settle in to unleash your wild flow. Rowena Hobbins is one of my dear soul sisters. She's also a client. She is a First Moon Circle facilitator. She's a women's coach. She is a healer. She is the creator of the New Pleasure Club. I'm so excited to share this episode with you. She's come back to be a guest again. She was on episode 12 of Wild Flow, where we were talking about healing a broken mother line by exploring rites of passage. Today, we're talking about all things pleasure. We're talking about what pleasure is, where we have both been in relationship to pleasure, what it has meant to us, what we have learned that it means to us now in our healing journey, in our growth, and what it's awakened in us, what the potentials are, and what you have to move through before you can even start to connect with pleasure. This is an awesome episode for anyone who's listening and like, yeah, I'm interested in that. I want me a piece of that. But also anyone who's listening going, ugh, pleasure. Mm-hmm. And it brings up some kind of maybe resistance or discomfort in you, or if you're just really feeling like pleasure is something that isn't accessible or possible to you. This is a beautiful conversation between friends, between space holders, between client and coach, between two women who are just sharing really vulnerably and openly our experiences. And Rowena's really sharing her knowledge and the journey that she's inviting women to go on with her in the new year, to look at the deeper relationships that we have with pleasure, where it comes from, how we form our relationship and understanding of what pleasure is, and then how we can move through that right through to building and strengthening and deepening our capacity to feel, receive, and hold pleasure in our bodies. So settle down and tune in for this delicious conversation with me and our guest, Rowena Hobbins. Rowena, welcome back to Wild Flow. How are you going today, gorgeous?
Oh, I'm really excited about this conversation. Really, really excited.
Me too. And just for people to kind of get a sense of where we're both at today, we'll do a cycle check-in a minute, but also just really want to frame this with, this conversation came about because this morning, it's now midday, I messaged Rowena and I'm like, hey, Ro, what are you doing today? Do you fancy doing a completely off-the-cuff podcast episode with me on pleasure? And you're like, let's do it. So here we are, spontaneous, feeling good, feeling excited, ready to jump into pleasure. So let's start off with a cycle check-in. Do you want to share with us, just to frame this, with where you're at in your menstrual cycle, and
Yeah.
how you're feeling today, and then I'll do mine.
Yeah, I think I'm day 21. I can feel it. Just definitely going into autumn. I can feel my warrior, my bodyguard, she's coming in today, and she's drawing the line and drawing the sword at the same time, ready to clear out again. So yeah.
Oof. Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love how you connect with your warrior at this time. That's such a great archetype. Mm.
Yeah, so powerful to connect into as well.
Mm. I'm in the opposite then. So I'm day 11 and I'm in spring, but like late spring, like almost Beltane of the year, like that kind of just a little bit almost where we are in the solar year here in the southern hemisphere, like just coming into summer. And I feel like ah, like it's quite funny. I kind of laugh at myself when I'm in this state because it just feels so light and joyful, and it's almost like the world feels good. And I've just got so much more tolerance for all the bullshit that goes on in life, and just, all the mundane kind of day-to-day stuff. I just have this much bigger capacity both to do it and to not be tired and to do extra stuff like random spontaneous podcasts. And yeah, just to put up with a lot more. So I think we're coming into the more harmonious time in our family, in our household as well. Haha. So everyone gets a better version of me. So yeah, so I'm late spring coming into summer, and you're like deep autumn.
I think I'm just on the cusp,
Mm-hmm.
but I did a breathwork journey on the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's brought my autumn forward in some ways too. So, which has been really interesting for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been big.
Yeah, it was huge. I just feel like breath work, for anyone who hasn't done it, there's all different types of breath work. I did the circular breathing, and it really just helped me to define the patterns that I use to create space in myself. And it's funny how you talk about your spring, Charlotte. Not funny, but kind of funny, haha, funny. Where you're laughing and you've got all the energy. And as I think I'm getting older, my spring is changing in ways too. So I think, I feel like seasons for me inside are changing, but the process is still the same. The way that we are birthed is still like it's coming still, even in my breathwork journey, that real forceful push at the end was the last part of my breathwork journey. And it was really interesting to see how that's brought me here to the autumn today, of just creating space and doing it with veracity and being able to speak my truth out into the world. So I'm feeling quite powerful, even though I feel like I'm in my autumn as well too.
Totally, it's the warrior coming through. Like the fact that you're like, yeah, I can do this with zero notice. Um, I just feel like a real strength coming across the airwaves from you. It feels like that's why I was like, are you in deep autumn? Because, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Everyone experiences these things differently, but my first part of autumn is usually a bit kind of like I have a real wobbly moment. The first half is kind of like it's like an extended summer, and then I kind of start to drop a bit, and then like a good few days into my autumn, I have this sudden clunk and a drop, and I get really, really wobbly. But then when the wobble passes, I get like this real strength that I feel like you're in right now, and then after those like the strong days, I get the like transition into my winter phase, which is again, it can be a little bit wobbly. But I do have this patch of time where I'm like strong and like, don't fuck with me. I feel like that's where you're at today.
Yeah, I totally feel that too. And it's so funny you talk about that wobble, because that's what happened in that journey this weekend with the breath work, because I definitely had that wobble to the point, like I know we talk about the nervous system and being regulated and being dysregulated. I felt very dysregulated in breath work, and people do breath work to feel regulated. That wasn't my experience. It actually took me to a place of feeling dysregulated. And I'm so glad I have the cycle knowledge, because I think anyone who may have experienced that and were in their spring may have had a very different experience. They probably wouldn't have had that forced wobble on them, to the point I actually felt like getting up and running and leaving the room. So I know that was my wobble, and it was the way that my hormones have changed. Like, I understand all the biology part of it too, but on a spiritual level, I think it's just nice to give myself forgiveness over the wobble as well too, and create the space around wobbles. And wobbles are okay to have too, even though I know the strength is coming. It's like stepping into the strong place can be hard. It can be, you know, you have to cut away the dead wood. You have to put people in their place when you haven't done it so much in the earlier parts of your cycle. So I definitely feel like even being away from my family was very indulgent on the weekend too. But it's just all those parts of you that knows that it's for the greater benefit of everybody as well too. So creating that space for me was definitely needed to have a deeper insight around who I am, and those parts that I haven't really accepted, the shadowy parts of myself too, were coming up. And that's what always comes up in autumn too. So for anyone who does do a breathwork journey and they're in their autumn, like, just be really gentle to yourself, because it really does show you a lot about yourself you probably haven't been aware of, and it feels like a mirror shoved in your face. So yeah, it was really, really eye-opening, Charlotte, definitely.
Yeah, it sounds really big. That's so interesting. I'm really glad you shared like your honest experience of it too, because I know this is something you've really wanted to do for ages. And so to be able to go like, I did it, it was massive. I didn't have the experience I thought I was going to have, actually made me feel dysregulated instead of regulated, and brought up so much shadow in that wobbly time for you. I appreciate your honesty with that. And I just think that, you know, isn't that interesting? Like, who was the teacher? Was it like gender-wise, male, female?
There was two space holders, both male and female, but I had male partners around me, which I've been drawn to a lot this year, having people that are men helping me, which is so like logical when I think about it, when I'm creating the pleasure club and redefining what pleasure looks like to me as well too. So actively seeking out men to help me with healing. So that's been a really interesting part of the journey as well too. So yeah.
That's really interesting, because I've been going to a yoga class with a male teacher, and I've always been to female teacher classes, and it's a friend, but still, like, I've just been reflecting a lot on how good it feels to be held by, like, he's a really beautiful man, like a healthy masculine who can hold a space, and, you know, there's no ego or anything like that. Like, it's just lovely, but it just feels so nice to have like a male space holder for a change, because, you know, you and I both do so much, like, we're deep in women's work, and it can almost be like a bit of a separation from, like, you know, steering away from men. I think that we can, you know, learn so much obviously from men, and from the masculine, and like when we feel stronger and more stable perhaps in ourselves as well, or an awareness, or have tools or whatever, I feel like now I can be back in a space with a male lead and feel really, like, allow myself to be held by that energy. It's just interesting. And the reason I asked you about who your teachers were, I was just wondering whether cycle awareness and breath work's a thing.
Yeah, I saw I saw the group that was there, and some people are at the beginning of their journeys. Some people have, 8 other different certificates behind their name, similar to me. I'm a collector of of certificates, the forever student, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I also can see how people use it as a bypass to not feeling. So they think if they're always on a healing journey, they don't actually have to feel bad. And that was, I let myself go really far on that breathwork journey where, in that space, we were learning to be facilitator trainers. Not everybody was as prepared to do that because they're wanting to feel that stance of being a trainer. And I think the most important thing you can do as a space holder or a trainer is to feel, and to feel big and deep. And that doesn't always have to be those really big, deep, ugly emotions. It can be other things too. And I feel like that's where my journey really has been too, is that I hadn't been feeling a lot of pleasure. Like it's always been wading through some of the deep negative stuff. I'm like a really long time anxiety sufferer. And I could definitely feel where anxiety has stopped me from feeling as a protection method for myself as well too. And, I think sometimes people can use modalities like breath work to do healing really hard and fast and quick. And that's just not what I'm about, even though that was my experience on the weekend for myself. And I think it's because I've just been on such a big year of transformation that I was in such a good headspace to actually go there and let myself feel that. But for people who have, the big T, big trauma, and, there's little t, little trauma, we've all just been through several years of a trauma, that I think it's really becoming a awareness that people want to do some kind of healing. But I think, breath work is just one modality. But truly knowing your own body is probably the biggest and best gift you can give to yourself around everything.
That's really interesting. So that's where you're coming to from this conversation, having been through such a massive weekend. So yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. It's interesting. So pleasure. Right. So why are we talking about pleasure? Right. So Rowena, everybody, is and you say you've been through a big year, like you've been, doing healing work for yourself and for other people, but for like years. This has not just been your start into it this year, although it's taken a different turn for you. And like you say, like I know you pretty well, like we've been connected, sisters for, working together in spaces together for a few years, I feel like. I think it's a few years now. Yeah, it is a few years. So, I think it's really interesting what you were just saying there about, having to wade through some of the deeper, heavier shit before you can come to this place of pleasure. So let's just start and this whole conversation off with what's pleasure to you and why? Yeah, let's go there. What's pleasure? What's pleasure?
Oh, I think it's so nuanced because it's a term where it awakens different parts of our body when we say the word pleasure. Like for me in particular, like when I think of pleasure, I straight away feel like my sexual organs just start to do a little dance, but it's not always the case, right? Like there's pleasure. Pleasure can be through food. It can be through sex. It can be through having a friendship that just lights you up. It can be looking forward to an event. All of these different things are pleasure. So it's really hard to define and put in a box. But I know the one thing that really does come to mind with pleasure is that it is an experience that is different for every human. It's similar in some ways and different in others. And I guess too, like our value systems that we are given as children and how we grow up can create how we feel pleasure. I mean, I myself have come from a background where grandparents were very religious, and we were told no sex before marriage and, be a good girl and all the rest of it too. So for me, sexual pleasure was something that I felt I really fumbled through to start with as well too. And I guess too, it's the way that we experience our gateway into from our teenage years to our early adulthood years that we really start to understand what feels good. And it's probably not until this year that I really had an awakening around pleasure. And it's through doing so much beautiful work with you, Charlotte. We've had just a really great year of adventure together. And I'm just so grateful for you and your space holding. And just really understanding my body better. And also, I think too, we can't feel pleasure if we're in a space of scarcity. And what I mean by that is if you're in survival mode, you can't access many feelings. And pleasure is definitely not one of them. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, we have that idea of we need our physical space to be safe. And then we need all those other things like food, air, not worrying about money. All of those things really interrupt our patterns of pleasure. So there's simple pleasures, and then there's really intricate pleasure too. And they're all connected. It's like, the trees with the roots and how they all intertwine with each other and they speak to each other. And when all the roots are working underground together, they're all aligned, they're not disconnected in certain ways. There is a real understanding of what our pleasure is. And our pleasure is passed on to us, and it's through the mother line, but it's also through the father line too. So it's interesting how we're talking about the masculine, but there's lots of other things there too. It's around how our body truly wants to show up and express itself every day, and how we let that expression come through is the purest form of pleasure. And if you think about being a child under the age of 6, where you see brains aren't formed with all of those other little things like value systems and morals, you can see how pleasure can be felt at such a basic level. But like I said, if we are in that true fight, flight, or freeze pattern, that rush to do everything, it is very, very hard to receive and also create pleasure in our body.
Oh, now that's an answer. That was also an answer. Like, yes. Love that. I love how you separated there, like simple pleasures and like more intricate pleasures and sexual pleasure with like what I think of as more like sensual pleasures. And I think, like I really hear you as well. Like for me, pleasure, I remember the first time I was ever asked by like a space holder to connect with pleasure, and I like almost kind of was like, ooh, because my brain instantly went to sex. And I was like postpartum, like really small third child, like not really having sex because I was still like, fully knackered, milk soaked, just kind of like, in like deep in the trenches. And I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about sex. I just remember having this like visceral embodied reaction and just thinking like, oh, and it was so interesting. And, like even that in itself, you go, oh, you have the awareness of how you're responding. But then, I was guided to look at pleasure as something that can be something that we experience with our senses as well. And for me, that felt like a real gateway into like reframing pleasure away from sex or like anything big. And I feel like that's kind of, I'm wondering if this is what you mean by like the simple pleasures. And something for me is like, I love to look out the window and just kind of admire the sun and the light and the flowers and, tasting beautiful food, like you say, and having a bath and just like swimming in the river and just lush things like that. Like, is that what you kind of mean by simple pleasures? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I do mean it by that too. But I think too, when we are in a state of real anxiety or a crisis, it can be very hard to stop and hear and see those things. And, you know, I know that when I've seen therapists before, that's something that they always say is to be aware of, you know, 3 things in your environment, you know, see, smell, taste or hear. And that's something just to bring you back to basic pleasure and to experience your world as it is right now. And I think what happens in society, which is very unfortunate, is that there can be such a disconnect for men and women into what pleasure actually is and how it is, for lack of a better word, dictated to us as well too.
Love that. Good one.
And I just think, you know, as women, we really feel that if we are enjoying ourselves in self-pleasure around our body, that we feel guilty about that because, you know, we want to put everyone above us first. And especially people who are care providers who, you know, have small children, even bigger children, or even being a stay-at-home mum or a woman who has more of the mental load around their family, it is the last thing that can be ticked off is pleasure. And it's about creating a knowledge and a space around how you receive pleasure in your life. Do you feel like it's a reward? Like, you know, and it comes back from that belief as a child. If you clean your room, you will get this really great, beautiful thing over here. But you can't get that until you feel that. So it's that training around the external reward of pleasure versus really noticing what's happening inside around our body. And this also comes around consent too. So as children, we're taught. And, you know, I'm guilty of it with my kids. Like I do say to them, look, hey, if we do this, you can have this, because I want to motivate them. But at the same time, it's giving them opportunities to really understand what their body is saying to them as well too. And so that can be taken away from us as a small child, the autonomy over our body and how we feel. It can even be the simplest things of, I remember as a child wanting to wear a certain dress and being told it was only a dress for going out and it was a good dress. And that dress gave me so much pleasure, and not to put that dress on my body and being denied that has been a small part of the belief pattern that I can only experience that feeling if I'm getting dressed to go out and to be seen in the world. So there's a lot of belief patterns that sit within us as women and also as men, because men carry this pattern of only being, not for every man, but for men who find it hard to attach into the female feelings and emotions and to have an emotional space that they can sit in and be held safely, is the only way that they can connect is through physical pleasure, through sex or self-gratification. So when they come to us with those needs to say, I want to connect with you in this way, we think as women, hey, this is something that I'm doing for them to make them pleased. You know, like that pattern I talk about as a child, like we're pleasing other people. As girls, we're taught to be people pleasers as well too. So it's really understanding how we are taught from just a very young age that we don't have that autonomy over our own pleasure. And it is really about consent, and consent starts in the smallest of ways. It can start with food choices, clothes, washing hair, how to brush your teeth. All of those things is a consent, an opportunity for your child to listen to their body and what feels pleasurable about them. Even when your child might put their hands down their pants and start to touch their body, how you interact with them is something that comes from our lineage and what we've been taught about our body too. So it's breaking so many things down, and it's so relevant to how we as women become mothers, and we have to hold space for so many things and for this real care of duty around our children that we see as a good mother. It is really praised if we do everything for everybody else, and if we get left to the very end of feeling pleasure, like doing things for ourselves, like going away and being away from our family for several weeks, or going out with the girls one night, or doing all these things that give us pleasure, if we deny ourselves that, it is put on the pedestal more than if we actually are given an opportunity to sit in who we really are and in our own pleasure as well too. And that goes for, I know there's a really high profile radio host here where I live on the Gold Coast, and she's a working mum. She's also a single mum, and she works extremely hard. She does all this really great stuff, but people always ask her, where are your kids? Like, why aren't you with your kids right now? And so even as women, when we really fulfill what we want to do in this life, which creates this immense amount of pleasure around us, we still hold this guilt over not putting other people's pleasure before our own. And we have to do that to access our own pleasure. We actually have to create space for our own pleasure so that we can be these humans that don't walk around feeling like a shell, like there's something hollow inside of us, and creates that whole feeling of scarcity inside of us. And, at the end of the day, it teaches our girls to do the exact same thing. And it teaches our boys exactly again that women are there to provide all the emotional needs, and that they don't have to actually step up and take responsibility over that as well too.
I want to interrupt this episode with an invitation for you to come and download your free gift, 12 magical rituals to nourish your menstrual cycle. This guide features 12 rituals, all beautiful practices, rituals, and gorgeous experiences you can give yourself in each of the 4 phases of your cycle in a winter, spring, summer, and autumn to help you to come back into beautiful, loving, nurturing, empowering relationship with your body, your cycle, and your wild feminine power. Come and download it now from my website, www.charlottepointo.com/free gift. Yeah, and it reminds me of, when I was growing up and, like just starting to discover sex, and it's, it's not about like, what feels good to you, like your, female needs, female pleasure. It's all, like you say, dictated. So, such a male centric, pleasure is, I feel like we've been brought up as like pleasure being a male birthright, but it's a female birthright. It's a human birthright. Like, it's in our bodies. Our body is built for pleasure, with our capacity to feel and the huge range of, spectrum of emotions and sensation that we have available to us. And, talking about sexual pleasure, like, we have a clitoris, like it has the most nerve endings or something out of any anatomical part of any animal. I think, men, women, everything included, something. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's in our bodies, and yet, girls are taught not to self-pleasure. It's like, but everyone knows boys, masturbate and have wet dreams and all that kind of stuff. And of course it's a bit jokey, but it's so accepted. Whereas I remember being in school, probably year 7, and a boy said how that females can masturbate. And honestly, my jaw hit the table. I was like, he said what? And like, I didn't realize that that's what I'd been doing. I hadn't made 2 and 2 together. It was just following that feeling in my body. But I remember like just the amount of shame about, touching my body. And it really reminds me, I look at my girls now, and not my older one. She's just turned 7. She's much more self-conscious now, but like I have a middle child who's extremely like tapped into her pleasure portals and her body, and she, always like she's just quite a central being. And so the younger two, they don't know what they're doing, but they're more, they might have their, might touch themselves, for example. And I just kind of go like, I've got nothing to say. It's not a thing. I don't want them to have, if they were doing it in public, then I would be, like you can do this in your bedroom kind of thing, and it's your body and that. But yeah, I just think, like you say, I'm thinking about all the times could potentially be giving them that subliminal messaging to forgo their own pleasure and do what's needed, and the impacts of that. Yeah, I really hear you on that. And I think you're so right that, we have this so much programming and conditioning around what pleasure means. Even the word, like you say, it does elicit like a really strong response in your mind, in your body, but it can be something that's, we all journey with. So tell us a bit more about your journey into pleasure, like what it used to mean to you and now, and like how you started to explore that and why you really wanted to.
Yeah, I just think I think even this conversation for me, like a year ago, if I knew I was going to be having this conversation with you, I probably would have died like a short death. Because the idea of even talking about sex with my children is so roomy, and, the idea of them, the idea of navigating their body and giving them guidance around that still feels so stretchy, even within myself. So to guide them on that, it just feels like an incredible opportunity for me to really do some big work, because I know that this is something that has been handed down to me as a responsibility from the women that, have foregone me and not been able to tap into every part of them. And so I think for me, pleasure was something that I remember we were down at the beach with the kids, and I was eating an ice cream and we were looking at some artwork, and I just couldn't enjoy it. Like, it was like, what is going on here about this idea of not being able to feel pleasure from just the most basic thing? And I could feel the tightness in my chest. I could feel the stretch, the worrying about what the children were doing. First of all, they were running, they were screaming, they were getting in people's way. I was looking at my husband and making sure that he looked like he was having a nice time and that he wasn't feeling too stretched in the situation. And it really kind of hit me that even though I was eating the ice cream and I was on one of the most beautiful beaches in the whole world, and looking at one of the most favorite things is art and being with my most favorite humans in the whole entire world, that I wasn't fully feeling this optimal part of being in this life, in this moment. And I just really wanted to dig into that deeper, because the pain that was around me, it was like, why is this sitting in this space? And why is this so big? And, knowing the discussions that I was having with other women and the feelings of being so contorted in their own body from similar feelings, and knowing that they were experiencing something similar to what I was experiencing, I just really knew that it was an opportunity for me to just go deeper. And I think for me that day on the beach, I just said to myself, just choose joy. Just even if it's for a second, like, just choose joy. Don't worry about anything else. Just choose joy, just for you, just for this moment. And it was in that realization of journeying back into the younger versions of myself, of how I had worried about other people and their happiness so much, and how it had taken so much away from me. And, I'm pretty conscious human. I'm not the type of person that will do things deliberately to engage with people. I do it in a really conscious way. And I think that's come through going through my 20s and 30s, as being in my 20s a very big people pleaser. And then in my 30s, having children really changed that, because they were my whole world, having young children. But just seeing how the edginess had multiplied from a really terrible year last year with the lockdowns with COVID, lots of changes with us, of our family, having my mum diagnosed with a really rare form of cancer, and just having a lot of really traumatic things starting to happen, that I just felt like I was in a hypervigilant state constantly, and I just couldn't feel anything. I just felt this tightness. And so doing a lot of work internally, lots of journaling, lots of coaching support with Charlotte, even exercising. I could see there was a real resistance even when I went to exercise, because I didn't want to feel that stretch and that pain, walking through that too, clearing that out. I really wanted to understand what the story was that was playing in the background. And it was a story about abandoning myself all the time. And I just knew that if I wanted to feel joy, that I couldn't abandon myself. The opposite for feeling pleasure is abandonment.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think it was this opportunity to really understand a lot more. And I have a psych background as well too. So I've done lots and lots of research around pleasure, especially in the last couple of months. I had a really great guest on my own podcast who her name's Alicia, and she's bisexual. And she spoke about how she had a relationship with a female after having relationships with boys, and how she truly learnt what pleasure actually meant. And, I think that's a thing that I had always defined, even sexual pleasure being connected with being with another human, not with myself per se.
That for me has been a massive exploration for myself as well, about pleasure being about a relationship with myself, not with anyone else. That for me, I think, goes probably right to the core of it. And everything you've said to this point is spoken to that. And I think those words there just encapsulates and summarizes like everything, about people pleasing and how you're raised, and roles, gender, and how that comes into it, and being in partnership with male or female, or whatever that looks like too. I remember when you first said to me about abandoning yourself, and it hit me so heavy, like in my chest. I was like, oh, that just feels like exactly what it's about. And so, for me personally, sorry, I've got like a real thing in my throat today. Now we're talking about pleasure. Isn't that interesting? About a relationship with yourself first, and that comes back to understanding what feels good to you first, like what consent, all of that piece as well. And I think that can be a really like a massive reframe for people who, especially if anyone's listening who's having like a kind of reaction to the word pleasure in this conversation. Asking yourself, like, what is your relationship to pleasure, and what does pleasure mean to you, and who is pleasure for? And like, do you feel worthy of receiving pleasure? And like, it's not just something you give, it's something that we can absolutely and should be receiving as well, whether in partnership or by yourself. And do you remember, Ro, what your intention was that you set with me at
I
all about
can't. I
your
actually
coaching?
can't. I actually can't.
It was something about romancing yourself or
Yes.
seducing
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
Do you remember
Yes.
that? And we
Yes.
set that in your coaching
Yes.
session at
Yeah.
we did some work together, and then we paused, and then
Mm,
we started like a second round, as it were. And that goes to what you said about the first period, if it's okay for me to
mm,
share.
of
Like
course.
we really, we went deep into the heavier stuff, the what was there and the challenges that you were going through. And once we'd kind of worked through that, then you came back and you're like, this new intention is about me, and it's about pleasure, and it's about, I can't remember the words, but it was something about um romancing or seducing, something like that, yourself. And I just thought, like, oh my gosh, how good is that? Tell us about that, like what that meant to you, and where it's taken you.
Yeah, I think it's just like, this journey. I was thinking about this the other day, like this journey you go on and you're like, what is the key? Like, what is the part that I'm missing here? And, I feel like every time I try to put a key into the door with a label on it and try to turn it, it just wouldn't turn. Like it just wouldn't turn.
Mm.
And as soon as I put the key in, that was the scariest out of the whole bunch. And it said pleasure. And it went into that little keyhole and I turned it, the whole door opened, and just all of these things came out, like lots and lots came out. And I just realized how abandoning myself over so many things for so many years had been this conditioning that I had built in me and taken on from all different people, from women, from men, from people in my early 20s about, I know we were discussing with a PT who had a very unhealthy mindset towards her body. And I took that on myself about my own body.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to really work on that because every time I wanted to have an expansion or grow, I just met this resistance. And it was like, why do I keep this pattern going of feeling like I'm going to entertain everyone over here in this space, of feeling like I'm wanted, I'm needed, and I'm desired, but still not fulfilling my life's purpose? And what was the bridge between those two worlds? And it was pleasure every time, every
Mm-hmm.
single time. Every time I wanted to crawl back in my shell and say, not today, I would think, how is this serving myself? You cannot abandon yourself anymore. Like abandonment is not you anymore. That's not who you are. And I think too, the thing that really activated that even more is having a child who's neurodivergent and watching them live in a neurotypical world has been a big eye-opener over pleasure too, because a lot of things in that child's world, to go to school every day, to put shoes on, to make sure they're on time every day, is very unpleasurable. And I can see with people how even workplaces might not be pleasurable, or having family members that they entertain in their home and it's not pleasurable. There's so many things that we do in life that are not pleasurable. And not to say that that's a bad thing, like there's a time and place for everything, but we get so conditioned to just putting up with stuff that we start to detach ourselves from who we truly are inside, like the internal dream version of who we are to the physical real version of who we are. And then we have like this soulful higher vision, and we can't have all three connected unless we experience pleasure and
Mm-hmm.
pain with all of them. Like we have to have the yin and the yang. It's both. It's really necessary in life. And I
I
just
agree.
really, yeah,
I
I
feel
just
like,
really,
through our body, it's how we we bridge, our body's our bridge. It's our
mm,
vessel in this physical world, and it's where it's all connected. And what you're saying there, it's like, we numb out, don't we? We're dealing with just so much that we numb, and we can't feel things anymore. We don't notice anymore. We're not embodied. I think that's been a big part of it for me too, is the embodiment piece. And I know that, we've done work on that too, and you're doing all kinds of work on that. Yeah, sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I love that, because I think it's first we have to connect with our body. Like, our body is the key to everything. Like, we came to earth to feel and to see and to hear and to smell. And, when we're not tapping into that, we're numbing ourselves out. And yeah, I definitely can see, even now when I do start to do my numbing out process, it's like, okay, what's going on? Like, why are you not connecting to yourself right now? What's happening? So I think, the first part is really understanding our body and, moving it and looking after it is a huge part of that. And I think that's the part that we abandon first as mothers, as we, especially when we birth, it's so, it's just, for me in particular, it was very traumatic. And, I think there's so many changes that happens with our body, that it's this acceptance over our body and what it looks like, and being in touch with it and connecting with it can feel really hard after we've had children and walked through our mother's rites of passage. If we haven't been held properly, then our body doesn't feel held as well too. So I think it's really important to do the connection with body and to do the clearing first, so that our body can move. Because, if we're in a mindset, particularly of scarcity, or in that flight, fight, or freeze, stressful life of living in numbness, and we're not in touch with our feelings. Like, and I love that you touched your fingers when you said that, because it's so true. We don't even feel pain in our body. If we've got an injury, we can ignore that, and that's our body saying, hey, we really want you to pay attention right now. And then it's really important to know that the body is a foundation for everything, which is so important, especially with cycle awareness. Like, if you hate your cycle, which I've had people say to me, like, I just don't like my cycle, I don't like my bleed. That's a really good place to listen to how your relationship is with your body, and why this work is so important too. But then it's really important, again, like, once we've got our body and it's moving and it's giving us space, like, every time you do something good for your body, it's going to reward you with the energy, so that you can create space to feel pleasure, but to also tap into other things that you have let go. So it might be cleaning out that cupboard that you don't want to clean out, and then it gives you freedom by having an organized cupboard. It might be going through your wardrobe and checking all the clothes that you really physically hate and that don't show you any joy or pleasure, and moving them on out, so that your body can still be an extension of your energy. And then when we've got that real in touch feel with our body, then we can start to explore relationships and how they been coded with pleasure. Is it that you're giving all the time and people are taking from you? Because when we're in this state of being the people pleaser, we can feel in our spring and our summer, not more so in our spring, that we have all the time for everybody and we can do whatever everybody else needs. But then when we get to the autumn, the bodyguard comes in. And she starts to, slowly remove the sheath from her sword. To say, this is enough, like, this is enough. And it's really important, especially we're coming into holiday period now, that we look at the relationships and how we spend Christmas Day. Like, are you in a tradition with people just because of tradition? And how you spend relationships and energy with other people is a huge source of pleasure. So it's really about understanding those relationships. And when we can have a really good grasp on relationships, then we're able to go, like Maslow's hierarchy, into more self-actualization. Like, why am I really here? what's my purpose in life? Like, what do I really want to do? Because that is the greatest pleasure of all. You know, like it may be because you're here to bring these beautiful children into the next legacy, because I always see my children as my legacy. It may be, like I know I always say to Charlotte, your legacy is so big and I love that. You're so inspirational to me. What you bring, Charlotte, your legacy, I know that it brings you pleasure to create the space that you have for women so that they can have a healthy experience with cycle work and cycle sorcery and their expansion. And when we're able to truly feel into our own self-actualization and understand more, we can plan better for the future. We're not so scared. You know, we can listen to the money stories that show up every day and make us fearful and not able to feel pleasure 24/7. And not to say that life isn't going to be shit, because it is shit and it can be really great. It's like a bubble, you know, like there's this beautiful bubble and then it pops, like it's always a way. That pain is always part of life. But if we're going to feel the pain, we also have to know that there is always pleasure in some part of it. And it's like we have to just really find where is the gold, and going back even into the relationships from your past and seeing what did it serve you? What did it give you? Like what created that dynamic of pleasure for you? And understanding how you want to recreate and reclaim pleasure, and titles for yourself too. Like for me, I know Charlotte and I have talked about this a lot, is it's been really hard for me to claim that I'm an artist. And even now it's like it's stretchy, like, you know, the pleasure in that, in feeling it truly. And even your name, the way you say your name, you can truly see how you're feeling pleasure in your name is when you say your name, and how you hear your name too. Like hearing your name being called, do you feel pleasure? And that's what, you know, we all want to leave this earth knowing that, you know, it's about how we love and how we are loved, because that essentially is pleasure, you know, like that pleasurable moment at the end of the day is feeling so aligned with unconditional love that we know we can always come back to joy, even when we don't feel joyous. It's this conscious space of creation.
Beautiful. That's gorgeous. I love that very much. I was just thinking as you were talking as well about how, you know, you can't feel pleasure without being able to feel the pain, and like how you can't have light without dark. Like you need to be able to welcome the whole spectrum of feeling and awareness in order to cultivate your capacity to feel pleasure, and to hold the pleasure as well, like in your body. And I think you can feel, you know, like you're talking about it as like, you know, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think that's the triangle that, you know, we all kind of learn. And something that I've learned as well is like, you know, it's like a spiral. So, you know, we have like this spiral sort of way of, you know, if healing is like a, you know, it's not a line, is it? Like you can go forwards and backwards, up and down, and how you can meet something again on your healing journey as you encounter it again. But as you go, you know, if the lower part of the spiral is kind of like, you know, in the underworld almost, so like, you know, under in the darker layers, the denser layers, as you know, make space and bring healing and safety, like you can't even think about accessing pleasure until you've moved up this spiral like a corkscrew, and you've got safety in yourself to even begin to open to receive and feel and hold pleasure. And you know, with that comes, you know, you need to have that, cultivate that capacity to feel before you can welcome it and move it and move it through your body and hold it and then express it out into the world. And I just love the way that you really, really talk to that as something that's just so important. And all the different ways, like the different pleasure portals that are available to us. Like, our body is the way that we can hold it and feel it and certainly experience it. But all those different ways, like the big ones, the small ones, like, hearing your name and finding your life purpose, like definitely there's so many different ways of experiencing pleasure. And I love how you've really broadened that from it's not just like, eating delicious food or even sexual pleasure. Like there's such a big, um, a big opportunity for us to feel pleasure in so many different ways in our everyday life, even when we feel like we're like deep in the trenches. So tell us then, you're at this point now of really reframing and re-relating to pleasure. And this is something that you've obviously been studying and journeying through very much. It's an embodied experience for you. It's something that you've really lived through. Tell us about the Pleasure Club. Tell us what the Pleasure Club is and how you found yourself at the place of inviting women to come and journey with you and to tap into their own pleasure.
Oh yeah, I know that we've talked about the calling of just having a space for women, and I've held group coaching containers before, and I really felt called to do it as more of a soul legacy to start with, and it just never felt right, and it just didn't land the way that I wanted to. It just felt a little bit too like I was detached from it, but I knew it was an important part as well too. And, like I was saying before, like with the idea of pleasure being the right key to turn the door, I knew that it was going to have a visceral reaction with other women hearing the word pleasure. And even having the words, the Pleasure Club, I wanted it deliberately to have that reaction for people.
When I heard it, I went, ooh, fuck yeah. It made me feel like,
yeah.
ooh, alive.
Yeah. And I want that for women. I want them to feel challenged in a safe way, of course, but I wanted people to be able to say, I want some of that. I want to feel my pleasure. I want to know what my pleasure looks like. I want to know how it was created. I want to know how to redefine it and go back and use this opportunity so that this is like a chapter in my legacy book that's called The Pleasure Club for Women. Like I wanted to create this space that just felt so roomy and so stretchy and so exciting, and knowing that this was going to be the year of, like I think the last couple of years for everybody has created this dynamic of shift and change where we feel now we can never go back. We can never go back to things being the way that they were. And I want the Pleasure Club to be like that too, but in a really vulnerable yet safe way. I think that's the thing that I have noticed too, that women come and they just don't have the disconnect from feeling their internal pleasure because they feel like it has to be outsourced per se. Do you know, like it has to be part of a relationship to feel that pleasure, or to have status is you have to be in a part of a relationship or doing all the things. I wanted them to know that their pleasure was coming from a deep, visceral place of knowing that this was all them. And no matter what happened to them, they always have this to grab onto. And I think that's always been something that has kept me going because, like the last couple of years, I think I could have really turned away from this, but it just keeps coming back at me to really hold this space for them, knowing that there are women out there who may have the perfect life per se. They might have the most beautiful home, most beautiful children. They might have, this lovely family, but they just have this complete disconnect from themselves. And I know from conversations that I've had with women that this is more common than we think it is.
Totally. There's very few women I know who've got like a really strong foundation for connecting with pleasure in their own body, whatever that means to them, like whatever form of pleasure. It's something that's so, and I think there's so much taboo around it and so much shame and guilt and like all the things you've said about being disconnected. And we've had, like you say, this huge collective trauma, like whatever trauma you've had, like the resonance of trauma is still the same in your body, whether you think it's a big trauma or not a big trauma at all. And we're holding so much, and like to come back now from this place of collective trauma, total burnout, exhaustion, and to drop back into our bodies and feel like there's a lot to move through before we can get to pleasure. What I'm really hearing you say is that you're going to hold this space where it's like, let's move through the kind of deeper stuff. Like this isn't just all like, we're just going to have like orgasms, or we're just going to like dance, or we're just going to, like learn about masturbation, or like have more sex, or like it's not frivolous. Like you're talking about doing this from a deeply rooted, safe, trauma-informed, embodied, like sovereign, consensual process that's not quick, wham bam, thank you ma'am, as they say. It's like, this journey of rediscovering, reframing, and moving through, like that fills me with a lot of pleasure. Tell me more.
Yeah. It's not a quick fix. It's like this is a fuck yes, basically, to you. It's putting everything into perspective. And, as much as I hold a trauma-informed space, I'm really aware of how women, again, have been dictated their whole life on how to feel pleasure. And I just want to create a dynasty for women where they can own their pleasure. And not only that, like I feel too, a lot of people who come to me for circle, and one of the reasons I started this whole journey was I felt really disconnected from women too. And I don't think we talk about enough how much pleasure it is to have a friendship with another woman that has an intimacy around it, where you can be just totally yourself. You don't have to be anything or say anything or give anything. You can just be you, and you can be fully seen. Doesn't matter if you talk too much about something. It doesn't matter if you're really upset, and, there's no apologies needed. And I know, Charlotte, like you've definitely been that human for me as well too. And
you too. I was thinking just like it gives me so much pleasure to have these, that kind of friendship that you're talking about, that real soul sisterhood.
Yeah.
And just to be met and received. And something else that comes to mind is like connecting as the essence of the human that you are, not the labels, like not the mom, not the wife, not the daughter, the partner, the sister, the professional, the career woman, the single woman, like whatever. It's just, who are you? Like strip that all away. Like that is a real liberation. And then to, peel all that back and then go, okay, and what do I like and what do I need and what feels good to me? But not just that, like all the deeper stuff. Amazing.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think it's a real, I hate to use this word because I know it's really overused in our industry, but it's that rebirth again to your own pleasure. But it's, like I think from a psych view too, we just have so much conditioning that we run off and that we're not actually aware of. Like, you know, why do we need to have the perfect school lunches for our children? Like, why do we have to go to all the things? And, you know, I just want to give women the opportunity to understand that it is really safe, firstly, to be them, which is, you know, that core principle you spoke about, that corkscrew effect of coming out of the darkness and out of the clouds, and to know that that is something that wherever you are, you'll be met too. And I think that's a real point of entry where pleasure is just feeling that, safe, like it's just safe to be held with other women, but to also explore how you connect through your self-esteem in pleasure too, because I think it's such a huge thing to see a woman out dressed however she wants to dress, wearing the most beautiful clothes, no matter what size her body is.
Even at school pickup.
Right? And you can see in their body they are feeling pleasure. Yeah.
So spill the goss. Don't keep me waiting anymore. Tell us what. Tell us what's the Pleasure Club evolves and how people can find out more or join.
Yes, we can go to my socials, which is raising_up_. So it's a 6-month journey. We're starting in January, at the end of January, and intention was the new year to really bring in 2023 to be your best pleasurable year ever. And so we'll go from new moon to new moon, so 6 moon cycles, and really staying in theme of that spiritual aspect, looking at going deeply into every aspect that I have learned. You will see Charlotte there as a guest host as well too, which I'm so excited about.
And I'm going to be talking about how pleasure intersects with the menstrual cycle and the cyclical way through pleasure, yeah?
Yes, I'm just so grateful for even cycle sorcery, because it's something that I've known, and just living even in those archetypes has been just amazing, just being a part of that group as well too.
Yeah, we've done a bit on pleasure, haven't we? It's been, I've loved it so much as well, just like creating that and offering that space and inviting everyone into exploring that and seeing everyone's different experiences and relationships with pleasure. It's potent. So I'm really glad that I feel like you're advancing the pleasure purpose.
For sure. Yeah, it's just going to be, it definitely will be a full body immersion. But if someone had said that to me 12 months ago, it's just not about the big O. It's really about all types of pleasure. I have Sam Baldock, who's also an Enneagram coach, who she's going to share Enneagrams with everybody as well too, as a guest speaker. And that was an essential part to find out what my Enneagram was too, knowing as a caregiver and how I become really resentful if people don't take on my caretaking as well too, and how I can receive pleasure in a more vulnerable way. So I found that was like a huge key that turned a lot of things for me as well too. And just really, I like to call it like the Harry Potter moment. So for any Harry Potter fans, you'll understand this, where Harry's at the lake and he can see a light in the distance, and it's this like, I think it's a deer, they call it, and he thinks it's his parents sending it back to him to help him in that moment. And as the movie goes along, he actually realizes it was him who was sending himself back into that space to help him in that moment. So we're going to have a few of those moments. We're going to go back in time and projecting ourselves back into the younger versions of ourselves to really understand the deepness of where our pleasure has come from. And lots of healing work, as well as a lot of growth. And I just always say, like, if you've got that butterfly feeling around the Pleasure Club, then that's your invitation to explore it more as well too.
Totally. Amazing. I hope that if you're listening and you're tuning into your body, and if you can feel those butterflies or this curiosity that you're like, oh, even whether you're like a fuck yes, or if you're like a, oh God, I don't know, like, what like resistance can be as much of a clear sign, even as much as the like tingles and excitement. So go just check out more and lean into your edge on this, and look at expanding your pleasure capacity, your ability to feel, to hold, to experience, because this for me has been a huge game changer. Like, I've been doing my own healing and growth work for so long, but really moving into exploring pleasure for myself and relating to it, but being able to feel it and being able to, like you said, like allow myself to feel pleasure and not be afraid of other people seeing me as like a pleasured woman. Like I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about like I feel like I'm a well-pleasured woman in all the ways, because I have moved through so much fear and shame and like deep childhood shame around it as well, about what that means. And can now, it's helped me to be who I am and to accept parts of me, but to be seen and to show up and to put myself out there and to love myself. And, one of the things that we did in Cycle Sorcery was we sat there and we just simply like put our fingers over our skin. And I remember like we all started off being like, oh, like some people were tired and other people were like, oh, what is this? And I was doing it too. And just, I would never have been able to do that and sit there with a group of women and just like stroke your body like really lightly with your fingertips, like just as one example. But just practicing, these little pleasure practices, whatever it is, it helps you to create your new normal, doesn't it? Like with anything, it's like instead of being terrifying, these things can become just a normal to you. And then the energy that you can hold and project can be such a transformational thing, whatever you do, whoever you are, about just being who you are and just owning it. That's my take. That's my experience with pleasure. I just wanted to share that, and then the sexual experience of pleasure has kind of followed that as well, like in line with that, and being, but being its own thing too. I just think it's such a massive thing that can get left out of like a personal growth and healing experience and journey that people are on. Like we move through, we talk about all of the heavy stuff, but we have to welcome in this light stuff. It's not fluffy, it's not superfluous, it's not like a nice to have. It should be something that we all have, and it gets as much airtime and space and is valued as much as all the other things. So go check out the Pleasure Club, please. So your Instagram, I'll put this all in the show notes. You've got your podcast too. What's your podcast called?
Raising Up the Podcast, which Charlotte's on as well too.
I'll put the links to that. And is there anything on your website or newsletter type situation?
There is a website link coming very shortly, and should be up by the time this podcast is up as well too. But yeah, I just love, Charlotte, what you just said about, I didn't even realize like all of us were in there touching ourselves in front of each other. I didn't even think about that until then. Like it's just, like I think we think self-care is like the safe word for pleasure, like it's this safe, nice word. I think pleasure is just whatever you need it to be. It's so tailored to you that it's yours to claim. Like it's your consent that's needed to feel pleasure.
And we will end it there.
Sounds good to me.
So much love. Thank you for saying yes to this spontaneous podcast. I think it was just an awesome conversation, and I really feel like you're just going to offer such a really beautiful, important, nourishing, healing, restorative, activating journey for people to come and be with you. So wish you all the best with it.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. I so appreciate this opportunity. It's been amazing talking to you again. Yay.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.